Donald Trump and Joe Biden enter the first presidential debate, and it goes terribly to the surprise of nobody. Donald Trump is declared an ally of white supremacists and then comes down with coronavirus a couple days later. And Joe Biden crowns himself the king of the Democratic Party. All of this and more on today's show. This podcast broadcasts at 2 o'clock on Sundays. You can view it then or anytime you like throughout the week. Also, consider subscribing as it helps the channel out, and if you don't like the content, you can always unsubscribe at a later date. It's free and it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, so please consider pressing that button. So, the first big piece of news for this week is obviously the debates. And boy, were they a mess. I mean, I watched the 2016 debates and some of the 2012 debates. I'm not that old yet. I didn't see like the 1992 debates here. But I saw the 2016 debates and I saw these debates. And Trump was way worse this time than in 2016. I thought it was overall really just a terrible debate. There was really no excuse for it. I thought Biden was equally terrible, frankly. I thought for once Trump was actually more factual than his opponent. Not that Trump is entirely unfactual all the time, but he made many fewer errors in this case. And this, of course, brings me to the point of who won the debate. The answer, nobody. I mean, I have my own personal opinions on who I thought quote unquote won the debate, but the general public perception seems to be that if you already were voting for Biden, you were going to vote for Biden a little bit more. If you were already voting for Trump, you're going to vote for Trump a little bit more. If you were undecided on voting, you probably aren't going to vote. That was actually a funny poll that I saw come out after the election. It showed of their undecided voters, nearly 33% said that they were less likely to vote in this election. Which, who knows? That could be a benefit for Trump. It could be a benefit for Biden. It depends on really where those voters were coming from. However, this debate really should have been a chance for Trump to get back his support from a lot of the white suburban women voters out there who in the last election sort of supported him, and he's been losing their support ever since because, well, Trump is Trump, and this particular voting demographic doesn't tend to like the attitude that Trump brings. So this was really terrible for him on that front. Biden, on the other hand, I thought on the questions he actually decided to answer, I thought he was terrible. But I'm going to start this off by talking about Trump because I think that is very worthwhile to beat him down a little bit. Trump's debate performance was terrible. From a decorum standpoint, it was horrid. He could not stop interrupting Biden or Chris Wallace. He continued on the same lines of attack for multiple rounds in a row. And by the end of it, if you weren't there for the fight night where The Undertaker goes and beats up Grandma, you weren't really looking forward to this debate because it was exhausting to watch. I mean, at the beginning, when Trump goes after Hunter Biden and attacks Joe Biden on his record a little bit, you know, that was sort of interesting. But once it got into the third round and we weren't even close to the initial topic anymore, it was just exhausting. I mean, Trump's tactic here should have been to come in, let Biden actually talk for once, because Biden, for the first time in most of the campaign, has to actually answer a question here. And he refused to answer most of the questions, and the other questions, he just sort of lied about most of them. And we'll get to that later. But Trump should have let Biden hang himself with his own words and then call him out on it. And he tried to do this once or twice, but because he had already interrupted so much, nobody was really paying attention, and Chris Wallace decided that those were the perfect times to bring Trump and Biden back onto the main track. And I mean, I could talk about Chris Wallace's performance. I don't think he was as good as he's been in the past. I think in the past he really was a better debate moderator. I think this time around he was really subpar. Now, I think he's gotten a lot of undue criticism. I think he sort of let the first round go, expecting it to be a civil debate. And when it turned out it wasn't going to be a civil debate, he sort of tried to grab the reins back. But by that time, Trump had already settled into his rhythm. He was already attacking Biden. And it was just like watching a giant snowball roll down a hill and keep getting bigger. I mean, it was something straight out of a cartoon there. Just the landslide of Trump. Now, of course, the big headline from Trump wasn't really that he pretty much berated Biden for the entire debate. It was that Trump gave support to white supremacists, which isn't true at all. I'm going to play a clip for all of you. I'm going to let you watch it the entire way through. Then I'm going to let you come to your own conclusions for a second. And then I will talk about what is actually going on in this clip, because it's very important to understand sort of what's happening here. Now, just to be clear, Trump did not give any support to white supremacists. He did not he does not like white supremacists. His record has been pretty consistent on this, really. So here's the clip.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left.
So as you can see there, he goes, like, sure, I'm willing to condemn them. The question is, are you willing to condemn them? A perfect answer for this is, sure, I'm willing to condemn them. And Chris Wallace, this is probably the worst he gets in the debate, next to one section he has where he talks about critical race theory and how Trump had banned critical race theory. But aside from that, this is really, I think, the worst Chris Wallace gets, because Trump, he's asked the question, are you willing to condemn white supremacists and right-wing militia groups? And Trump goes, sure, I'm willing to do that. He says it not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then he says, well, do it, sir. And Joe Biden hops in because this is the perfect opportunity. And you can see the visible confusion. I'll go through this sort of piece by piece in a second. But he goes, you can see the visible confusion. And then he goes like, okay, well, what do you want to call them? I've already condemned the white supremacists. What do you want to call these guys? And then he hears Chris Wallace saying white supremacists, and he hears Chris Wallace and then he hears Joe Biden going Proud Boys. And he says, and he thinks in his head, and I'll show you this later, but he thinks in his head basically, I don't know who the Proud Boys are. Okay, Proud Boys, stand back, stand by. And what he means is stand down. Now, let's be clear on a couple things here. First off, the Proud Boys are not actually white supremacists. They're not. The leader of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, has come out explicitly against white supremacy. He has purposefully distanced the group as far away from those kinds of people as possible. They are a multiracial group. They contain whites, they contain blacks, they contain Latinos. They're not just these white supremacist, white nationalist guys. At the most, they're this sort of alt-right, alt-light type troll group, and they're not great. I'm not going to say they're upstanding people at all. I mean, they go to places to cause problems, but I don't think that they're racist. And truthfully, I don't think Trump knows who they are. So here, we'll go and break it down as it goes here.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to...
So right there, that is the first sure. He says, are you willing to condemn white supremacists and white militia groups? Sure.
Say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
And there he goes. Sure, I'm willing to do it. That's 2 times now he condemns this group.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
And right there, this picture perfectly describes what's going on at this point. You can see the confusion in his face. He's like, I've already condemned them. And this immediately leads to the next piece.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. FBI directive.
And right there, you know, he says a very true statement at the end, that the real problem out there right now is Antifa. Now, on the last thing he says, if you don't know who the Proud Boys are, or if you just like labeling the Proud Boys as white supremacists to try and sort of get your viewpoint across to people and stick it to some people, then you're going to immediately come away with your own conclusion here that Trump did a racism. Except that that's not the case at all. Again, the Proud Boys aren't white supremacists. I can see how people would come away with this opinion, especially without really knowing the context. I mean, Trump has denounced white supremacy multiple times. He did it just last year in 2019 after the El Paso shooting. He did it after Charlottesville, maybe not immediately after Charlottesville, for which he was rightly criticized. But the day after that, he came out and said, listen, I'm not talking about white supremacists. Those guys are terrible, which is absolutely categorically true. But of course, the media wants this narrative that Trump is this vicious racist, and they must have this narrative because, by the way, the New York Times, just a couple months ago, when the Russia narrative finally, for the last time, broke down, and they beat the horse to death. They beat the dead horse to death with the Russia narrative, really. The New York Times came out and said that they were switching their writers over from Russiagate to cover Trump racism. They have been preparing for this for months, and they got their little golden egg, and they're going to put it up on a pedestal, and the golden egg, it turns out, is full of literal crap. So, then, obviously, again, this was very inarticulate, but the next day, Trump comes out and basically says what I'm telling you right here, that he doesn't really know who the Proud Boys are, and he doesn't like white supremacy. He's always condemned it. Like, he has condemned it multiple times. And the truth is, the media doesn't care how many times he condemns it. I'm surprised this video didn't make rounds or any headlines over the week. But this is the country we live in today. So here's Trump going out and condemning the Proud Boys and white supremacy.
Because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work. Law enforcement will do the work more and more. As people see how bad this radical liberal Democrat movement is and how weak, the law enforcement's going to come back stronger and stronger. But again, I don't know who Proud Boys are, but whoever they are, they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
Mr. President, you misspeak when you said stand by. That's my first question.
Just stand by. Look, law enforcement will do their work. They're going to stand down. They have to stand down. Everybody. They have to stand, whatever group you're talking about, let law enforcement do the work. Now, Antifa is a real problem because the problem is on the left. And Biden refuses to talk about it. He refuses to issue the words law and order. You saw that last night when he choked up. He can't say the words because he'll lose the rest of the left. So He's got to condemn Antifa. Antifa is a very bad group.
So, yeah. Mr. President, when you follow up, white supremacists, they clearly love you and support you. Do you welcome that?
I want law and order to be a very important part. It's a very important part of my campaign. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is law enforcement the police have to take care. And they should stop defunding the police like they've done in New York. Like they've done in New York. I just told you.
But you denounce them. Do you denounce
I've always denounced any form of any of that you have to denounce. But I also, Joe Biden has to say.
So right here, you can obviously see this is Donald Trump coming out and saying law enforcement have to do their job and that he doesn't really know who the Proud Boys are. As I've said, he doesn't really know who these guys are. They're not really white supremacists. They're sort of these alt-right trolls. And he says, you know, they have to stand back and let law enforcement do their work. And when he's specifically pressed on white supremacists, and I love how the reporter just goes, oh, white supremacists, they love you. Does anyone realize that Richard Spencer, one of the most popular white supremacists out there, like the guy who coined the term alt-right for white supremacy, basically, went out and endorsed Joe Biden? If we want to talk about who the white supremacists love, I don't think they're hugely in favor of Trump when Richard Spencer, one of the David Dukes of our modern day, is coming out and endorsing Joe Biden. Now, this is the second time in 2 days. Monday was the first day. Tuesday is the second day that Trump comes out and denounces white supremacy. And here I will show you the third day where on Hannity on Fox News, Trump goes and for the third time in 3 days in a row comes out and completely denounces white supremacy and even denounces the Proud Boys. So here's Trump on Hannity denouncing the Proud Boys and white supremacy.
Did the 1994 crime bill. That's the super predator bill. So he did the super predator bill. And when you look at it, but Mark Levin is right. He's 100% right. No matter what you say, it won't make any difference. And I have to say, I've said it many times, and let me be clear again. I condemn the KKK. I condemn all white supremacists. I condemn the Proud Boys. I don't know much about the Proud Boys, almost nothing, but I condemn that. But he should condemn also Antifa. Antifa is a horrible group of people. They kill people. What they do to people, and they're causing.
So there's Trump again denouncing white supremacy. And, you know, his points on Antifa are absolutely correct. Antifa is a terrible group. And I'm surprised that Joe Biden was allowed to get away with this. I'll get to this in my next section. But Joe Biden got away with a ton during this debate, largely thanks to Donald Trump's either bad articulation or just his terrible debate performance, frankly. So Biden, for his part in this debate, I thought was terrible. I mean, I thought when Biden actually decided to answer the questions that he lied about them, basically. And when he didn't answer the questions, it is deliberately trying to avoid the answer that I mean, I'm going to put words in his mouth, but I think he's deliberately trying to avoid the answer he wants to give. So the first terrible thing that Joe Biden talks about that I'll list, these aren't in any particular order except what I consider to be least egregious to most egregious, is his position on the Green New Deal. So Biden in the debate, basically in the span of, I'm not even kidding, 30 to 45 seconds, swivels from the Green New Deal is great and it's going to save us tons of money to the Green New Deal is, no, I don't support the Green New Deal. This was a big theme for Biden. again, I think Biden handled the decorum a lot better. And this is sort of where, if you look at your social media or you look at the news, this is sort of where he's getting the props, because Biden was presidential. The truth is, he was not very presidential. He had plenty of his own sort of Trumpian comments and snide remarks. In fact, you'll see one in this first clip I'm going to bring up on the Green New Deal, where he sort of laughs with Chris Wallace about how terrible Trump is on his decorum, which not good for him, really not good for him either. But so in 30 seconds here, maybe not even that much, you're going to see Biden do a complete 180-degree turn on his opinion of the Green New Deal. See if you can catch it. It's very not subtle.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice President. Answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Oh, you don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
that means you just lost the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
Hey, NBC.
So, I mean, just extremely obvious there. I don't know if you saw it. I mean, I saw it, but Biden basically goes and says, "Oh, yeah, the Green New Deal, it's going to save us millions of dollars. This is a nearly $100 trillion proposal, which by all accounts would basically just destroy the economy. I mean, you're talking, it would get rid of airplanes. It would basically cede to the slaughter of millions of cows to get rid of methane, of all things. By the way, methane is... it burns off very quickly in the atmosphere. I think it has a half-life of something 23 days. The Green New Deal calls for the killing of millions of cows to get rid of 23 days worth of methane. Yeah, that's a great idea. But and Trump is absolutely right to interrupt at this point and go, "You just lost the support of the radical left," because you know what? If Biden decides to take this position, and he cannot have it both ways. He just can't. If Biden decides to take this position of, I don't support the Green New Deal, I support my own deal. This is something that the far left really wants. It's something that the radical Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really want. So it's either he loses the support or he's just lying. Now, I'm leaning towards the side that he's just lying at this point, because AOC is pretty much running this part of his campaign. He wrote this part of his campaign with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, this, of course, leads to the next most egregious thing that Joe Biden decided to say all night, which was, "I'm not going to answer that question." So he was very poignantly asked by Chris Wallace if he would or would not pack the Supreme Court. Now, when I say pack the Supreme Court, I mean adding 4 new justices to the Supreme Court who would all be appointed and picked by basically Joe Biden and the Senate. And that would completely throw off the balance. Now, you could make an argument for adding new justices to the court. There's 13 circuit courts, so why not have one Supreme Court justice to sort of oversee each court? There are arguments you can make for this. However, the real argument right now is that with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it is a grave disservice to the Supreme Court that Donald Trump, as the President of the United States, make a nomination under his constitutional obligation, and that the Senate, under their constitutional obligation, decide whether to confirm or deny the appointment. And the Democrats see this as an extreme threat to them, because if the court starts leaning more conservative, then they don't get the same level of judicial activism that they experienced with 4 largely liberal justices. Now, say Joe Biden does get on the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas and Justice Alito are not very young. It is possible that he could be filling a new Supreme Court seat and replacing one of the conservative justices with a liberal one. There is no reason to pack the court, but he deliberately avoids the question for what I can only assume to be to just divert away from the fact that he wants to pack the court. So here's Joe Biden basically avoiding the question about whether he'll pack the court or not.
Mr. Vice President, if Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the court?
Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator.
An absolutely true statement by Donald Trump right there. Joe Biden, I'm not going to answer that question. Instead, I'm going to tell you to go out and vote. What does that have to do with the question in any way whatsoever? Seriously, what at all does that have to do with the situation here? I have no idea. I mean, it sort of disturbs me to a degree that this is an actual position taken by a presidential candidate, that there's a possibility of packing the court. Does go out and vote mean if you support me and I win, I'm going to pack the court if Trump gets his nominee? I mean, you're talking about changing the fundamental structure of one of our branches of government. This is no small issue for anyone involved. This is probably one of the largest issues that should be central to the campaign. Biden says, I don't want to make that the topic. Well, if you just say no, it's not the topic. If you say no, the answer should be simple. No, I'm not going to pack the court. No, I'm not going to end the filibuster, which Biden used regularly, the filibuster. Many of his Democratic colleagues have used the filibuster. It is a very important part of the Senate. The gridlock is part of the process. The filibuster is good. But back to the Senate, you're talking about fundamentally changing one of the 3 branches of government, one of the checks and balances. And your best answer is go out and vote. So this leads me to the second worst thing. I don't know if I've said that before, but this is probably the second worst thing Joe Biden said all night, because I just remembered another, and I'll have to grab that clip in a second here. But Biden basically just denies the idea that Antifa even exists. In this clip, you're going to hear him call Antifa an idea. Well, I have a news flash for people out there who think Antifa is an idea. Ideas do not hit you over the back of the head with a baseball bat. Ideas do not hit you over the head with bricks and soup cans in the middle of riots. Ideas do not burn down buildings. Organizations burn down buildings. People burn down buildings. And Donald Trump very poignantly asks Joe Biden, and this was right after Donald Trump condemned white supremacists. Again, maybe not in the most articulate fashion, but right after he did that, he asked Joe Biden to condemn Antifa, who have been rioting in Portland for some, I don't even know how long at this point, because I think they've declared at least 83 some emergency declarations for riots caused by Antifa. I mean, you can't claim that this is not an organization, or at the very least that this is not a violent group that is well deserved of denunciation. So here's Joe Biden refusing to condemn Antifa.
I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
malicious. That's what his FBI. His FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody
Antifa
in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
I mean, that was just poor form from Chris Wallace there. I mean, that should have been a point where Chris Wallace goes to Biden and says, well, hold on, I think there's a point here. Antifa has been rioting in the streets for months now. Do you condemn Antifa? Now, this, of course, brings me on to the third point, and probably the absolute worst thing I have ever seen from a presidential candidate. So Joe Biden hops onto the debate stage and basically decides, you know what? I'm going to really take control of everything right here. The question was something about healthcare. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Joe Biden basically goes and says what I think every Democrat should be absolutely appalled by right now. And he says, I am the Democratic Party. And I'm not even going to say a ton on this issue. I'm just going to let his words speak for themselves.
That is simply
your party doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
Socialist
right
healthcare.
Now. I am,
and
the
they're going to dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200 million.
Well, I hope everyone heard that. Joe Biden is the Democratic Party. Congratulations to Joe Biden for being the Democratic Party in its entirety, right there. Just the entire Democratic Party, one person. It's not the Democratic Party's platform, it's Joe Biden's platform. One single person. And this should just be scary to the American people. This should really be scary. Because this is one person saying that the entire platform that speaks for millions of people is not the platform of those millions of people. It's the platform of one person. That is an absolute shame on our politics. This is why I thought Joe Biden lost the debate. As loud and obnoxious as Trump was, and believe me, he was unbearably obnoxious at some times, I really think that this is where Joe Biden just absolutely lost it. And the sad part is that if Trump took the 10 minutes of the debate to stop talking and let Joe Biden hang himself with his own words, these points would have been all that was talked about. This would have been all that was talked about. All Trump had to do was articulate one sentence better and make like 20 fewer interruptions out of the entire debate. That was all he had to do. And again, this is why I think Trump won, but we have 2 more debates. We'll see how that ends up going. So the second largest piece of news for this week was obviously the fact that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has gotten coronavirus. And this led to a wide variety of outpouring of support, apathy, or hatred I have probably seen directed towards a sitting president ever. I mean, if this kind of stuff happened to, say, Obama, or even to George W. Bush, you would not see the same reaction that we have seen. We have seen blue check marks on Twitter openly hoping that the president dies of COVID. We have seen people just sort of going... I mean, I saw an article from the Washington Post. This was not opinion. This was not even an analysis. This was an article claiming that the President of the United States is going to hide the severity of his condition He's going to just he's going to be incapacitated, and they're going to pretend he's alive. It's going to be like Weekend at Bernie's, where they're going to have 2 CIA agents sort of walking around holding him up under his shoulders, pretending that he's walking and just being like, no, he's alive, as some sort of like deep state cover up. Who really thinks that this is possible? I mean, this administration leaks like a broken faucet. How long do you think that would be a secret for? Now, what I'm personally waiting for, just for the entertainment value, is when the report comes out saying that saying some high-ranking advisor or staffer in the White House claims that the president has actually died, only for Donald Trump to walk out into the Rose Garden and be like, no, I'm very much alive here. Sort of like Monty Python. So I think that some people had some good responses. Joe Biden for his part, Obama for his part, both had great responses, which was what should be the normal response. It really shouldn't even be great. This should just be the expected, which is, we hope the president gets better. Obviously, for all the political differences in the world, we hope that people don't die. And Trump, for his part, has been playing this very candidly, very calmly, too. And I think that the best strategy for Trump is, if this doesn't turn out to be a severe case, excuse me, people are going to be watching this. And if this doesn't turn out to be a severe case, and Donald Trump continues to project how it's going for him, people are going to look at this and they're going to realize that, maybe we can be fine not having these insane, strict lockdowns. I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm currently in North Carolina. And I'll tell you what, the Pennsylvania restrictions are absurd. The North Carolina restrictions are pretty tough, but the PA restrictions are pretty absurd in exactly how severe they are. They're some of the strictest restrictions in the nation right now. In fact, a federal judge went and ruled that some of them were unconstitutional because they violated the First Amendment, which, great job, Pennsylvania. And so a lot of the criticism surrounding Trump getting COVID has been this sort of, oh, well, he doesn't constantly wear a mask. He doesn't promote the mask wearing. I think it was back in August or late July, he said, wearing a mask is the most patriotic thing you can do. But that doesn't matter, because he doesn't always say it. He doesn't always do it. They think that the left and the Democrats and the media have this idea that if you aren't always leading by example, then everyone's just going to ignore it. And to a degree, they're right. People tend to look at the anecdotal evidence over the statistical data. It's a flaw in how humans sort of think about these things. But, if that's how it works, I think they give it way too much credit. They think that the president, if he doesn't wear a mask, somehow the entire nation's just going to ignore all the regulations and get COVID. Now, I'm personally surprised he hasn't gotten it earlier. He has been very active on the campaign trail. He's still doing his job in the White House. Joe Biden, for his part, again, is mostly sitting in his basement. And there was some concern that Joe Biden may have gotten the virus. He didn't. He tested negative. Mike Pence has also tested negative. So have the president's children, Ivanka, Jared Kushner, have tested negative. So it's only Trump and Melania Trump, the president and the first lady, who have COVID right now. And again, the optics of this are going to be sort of what drives it. So if Trump can keep up the optics and he has a mild case, this could end up going really well for him, because it could move towards lessening these restrictions, or at least changing the public perception of COVID to maybe a more reasonable one, where we expect people to take reasonable precautions, but we don't expect the government to impose absurd regulations. And that's sort of what I think the theme is going to be here. Now, the president released a video from the Walter Reed Medical Center, and I'm going to play this video in its entirety in just a minute here. I think it's really important to watch and understand just how this is going, how he's handling it, and I think that he has some really good messaging in here. So here is Donald Trump from the Walter Reed Medical Center addressing the nation.
I want to begin by thanking all of the incredible medical professionals, the doctors, the nurses, everybody at Walter Reed Medical Center. I think it's the finest in the world for the incredible job they've been doing. I came here, wasn't feeling so well. I feel much better now. We're working hard to get me all the way back. I have to be back because we still have to make America great again. We've done an awfully good job of that, but we still have steps to go, and we have to finish that job. And I'll be back. I think I'll be back soon. And I look forward to finishing up the campaign the way it was started and the way we've been doing and the kind of numbers that we've been doing. We've been so proud of it. But this was something that happened, and it's happened to millions of people all over the world, and I'm fighting for them, not just in the U.S. I'm fighting for them all over the world. We're going to beat this coronavirus, or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to beat it soundly. So many things have happened. If you look at the therapeutics, which I'm taking right now, some of them, and others are coming out soon that are looking like, frankly, they're miracles. If you want to know the truth, they're miracles. People criticize me when I say that, but we have things happening that look like they're miracles coming down from God. So I just want to tell you that I'm starting to feel good. You don't know over the next period of a few days. I guess that's the real test. So we'll be seeing what happens over those next couple of days. I just want to be so thankful for all of the support I've seen, whether it's on television or reading about it. I most of all appreciate what's been said by the American people, by almost a bipartisan consensus of American people. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I very much appreciate it, and I won't forget it. I promise you that. I also want to thank the leaders of the world for their condolences, and they know what we're going through. They know what, as your leader, what I have to go through. But I had no choice because I just didn't want to stay in the White House. I was given that alternative. Stay in the White House, lock yourself in, don't ever leave, don't even go to the Oval Office. Just stay upstairs and enjoy it. Don't see people, don't talk to people, and just be done with it. And I can't do that. I had to be out front, and this is America. This is the United States. This is the greatest country in the world. This is the most powerful country in the world. I can't be locked up in a room upstairs and totally safe and just say, hey, whatever happens, happens. I can't do that. We have to confront problems. As a leader, you have to confront problems. There's never been a great leader that would have done that. So that's where it is. I'm doing well. I want to thank everybody. Our First Lady is doing very well. Melania asked me to say something as to the respect that she has for our country, the love that she has for our country. And we're both doing well. Melania is really handling it very nicely. As you've probably read, she's slightly younger than me, just a little tiny bit. And therefore, just we know the disease, we know the situation with age versus younger people. And Melania is handling it statistically like it's supposed to be handled. And that makes me very happy, and it makes the country very happy. But I'm also doing well, and I think we're going to have a very good result. Again, over the next few days, we're going to probably know for sure. So I just want to thank everybody out there, everybody, all over the world, specifically the United States. The outpouring of love has been incredible. I will never forget. Thank you very much.
So I think right there you have the president at his absolute best. I mean, he's speaking very lucidly, he's speaking very straightforward. I think he has some really great messaging in there about leading from the front, not leading from the rear. He's absolutely right about this, that it's the job of the president to lead from the front lines. It is not reasonable to sit locked up like Joe Biden. And I'm going to compare and contrast him to Joe Biden because, frankly, they are political opponents here, and they deserve that compare and contrast. So when Donald Trump is saying, there's never been a great leader who's led from behind, he's absolutely right. I think he deserves a lot of credit for this speech. It was very well put together. Again, great messaging. He gets across a lot of the great points about how we actually handle COVID in the medical field. I mean, since the beginning of this pandemic, the case death rate, the number of deaths per case, has declined by some 70%. It's amazing the things we've managed to do. And I think that if Donald Trump keeps coming out and saying these things and showing this to the American people, it's really going to pay off for him in the long run on the election. But I also think it's going to pay off in the long run for actually getting us out of this, showing us that, he's older, and even some older people can survive this. Now, it is true, not everyone survives this. You should still take precautions. You should still wear a mask when you're in close proximity to people. You should still practice social distancing. These are all things he's talked about in the past. But I think that he gets a lot of credit for this particular speech here. So the last piece of news I have for today comes courtesy of the Washington Post. In an article titled, "It's Like Trump Said, the Cure Has Been Worse Than the Disease," a restaurant owner basically talks about his experience going through the COVID crisis, in which a family business that has been running for 3 generations roughly, it basically got shut down, not by order of the governor. It didn't fail because the governor said that this business had to fail. It failed because the restrictions ended up being so tight that the business just no longer was able to sustain itself. I mean, these guys had, from what I can tell, well over 6 months worth of savings to go through. And the truth is that this is a reality for a lot of business owners out there, especially small business owners. People complain all the time about how the big businesses are making out like bandits during this pandemic. And the truth is that they're doing it because the government allows them to. They have lobbied the government, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to lobby the government, these big businesses, but these large corporations have lobbied the government with their money and their leverage to basically allow them to remain open and just keep operating as normal, as small businesses are required to be the ones who suffer. And it really shows just how disconnected these political elites are from regular people. I mean, you go to a restaurant, you wear a mask in through the front door, you sit down, and as soon as you get your water, your mask comes off. I mean, how much is that really preventing COVID? How much is keeping a restaurant at 50% capacity preventing COVID? I mean, down in, Louisville, Kentucky, I believe, or no, Nashville. Down in Nashville, Tennessee, I remember this story. They came out with a chart. They didn't come out with a chart. A chart was leaked showing that restaurants were not a vector for transmission. And I'll repeat this again, in just slightly different words. Restaurants were not a main cause seen by Nashville for the transmission of COVID-19. It turns out you are much more likely to catch COVID from a family member or from a close friend of yours than you are at a restaurant, because you're not really in close proximity to those people regularly, and you're not in the restaurant for a whole ton of time. And if the restaurant's even taking mild precautions, like most sensible people are, you're pretty much perfectly safe. So what the government has done is they've optimized a system where some restaurants get to survive and some restaurants get to fail. Some businesses get to survive and some businesses get to fail over this invisible threat that they don't want to release the data on. And this all comes to a head where Tom Wolf, governor of Pennsylvania, my home state, boy do I enjoy having to say that sometimes, was basically caught on camera laughing with one of his advisors about how masks are just political theater. They're wearing masks in front of the cameras. There's really no need for them to do it. But they're laughing about how they're just doing it to make it look like masks work. They call it political theater. Whether they were joking or whether they were being serious, it doesn't matter, because this shows, again, just how disconnected the political elites are from regular people. And it's something that has to change. I mean, I think it would be stupid of anyone to say that this pandemic is not coming to a close. I mean, whether we like it or not, we're getting closer to herd immunity. We're getting close to having a vaccine out, which will help the medical field first, and then will be widely distributed as soon as it can be. And I mean, we're maybe we're not looking at a couple weeks. It's probably not going to be out. There's probably not going to be over before the election. It's still going to be an issue by then. But these notions where, like, New York has put out back in August that they weren't going to see indoor dining until July of 2021. July, or was June or July? I can't remember. It's so far in the future. June or July of 2021. There's no reality involved in that. Joe Biden wants a national mask mandate, despite the fact that is widely contested the effectiveness of masks in the first place. I mean, you have to actually know how to use your mask properly. And I guarantee you, most people are not using their masks properly. To use a mask properly, one, you can't actually touch the front of the mask. You can't put it in your pocket. Taking it off at all, it should be the greatest risk that you have to catching COVID-19. Putting it in your pocket, that makes it dirty. Touching it with your hands after someone's breathed into the air COVID and then breathing through your mask, that's not going to protect you from COVID. You have to, in the medical field, people are required to take classes on how to properly wear these masks. Thank you for watching the show. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. The show's self-produced and every little bit helps. Also, share it with your friends if you like it. And if you don't, again, you can always unsubscribe at a later date. It's free to subscribe, so make sure to hit that button. Let's check back in with you next week.